katolicizmus, protestantizmus, ökumené, ehhez hasonló kérdésekkel foglalkozunk ebben a mai adásban, különleges módon angolul. So I turn into English and switch the language and welcome everybody. First of all, Leonardo De Chirico from Rome, Italy. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm very well, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, so it's Friday, and a day before yesterday, you had a lecture here in Budapest at Károly University, which was organized by Botond and Bálint. Actually, the dear audience is familiar with these two gentlemen from the Charlie Kirk interview from September. And Botond was the organizer, and Bálint was the translator of your lecture. Guys, let me turn to you. How the idea came to your mind to ask Leonardo to share his thoughts? Bottom.
So I've met Leonardo before at ELF. So we've known each other before, and I saw that in Hungary the ecumenical issue is really important for the traditional churches or like historical churches in Hungary has a lot to do with the Roman Catholic Church, and we have ecumenical prayer week around and everything, and that's why I see that it's a topic that we have to talk about because we decided that we take part in ecumenical prayer week around the Hungarian Reformed churches, and I think that it's an issue we have to talk or we have to decide if it's a good decision that we made earlier. So that's why I saw that it's an important topic to talk about. How to take part in ecumenical union or what type of unity can be based on the Bible and what type of unity is outside of our convictions. So that's why I thought that Leonardo would be a great fit for our Hungarian situation. So that's why I thought that it would be really great to invite him, and I'm really thankful that you could come and it was really great to hear your lecture here in Hungarian from churches. So we talked with pastors and they all said that it was really important to hear about this issue and talk about it little bit. So thank you again, and that's why we were thinking about it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and we will ask later on Balin. But Leonardo, you mentioned in your talk a scale which is between Roman and Catholic when you described the Roman Catholic Church. Could you please summarize this idea? Because I think it was personally for me very useful, and as I looked around into the audience, it was something a new approach. So could you please summarize that to be able to understand the biggest so-called Christian religion?
Yeah, sure. The name itself, Roman Catholicism, tells us that the very definition of what Roman Catholicism is contained in the combination between the Roman and the Catholic. And Catholicism is both Roman, attached to the city of Rome, the history of Rome, the authority of Rome, the magisterium of Rome, the center of Rome, the hierarchy of Rome, the sacraments of Rome, etc. But at the same time, it is Catholic, meaning universal, embracing and englobing and expanding and absorbing. And Catholicism is in between these two poles and lives in the tension between its Roman element and its Catholic element. And the tension can be seen across the history of the Catholic Church. At times, it was the Roman element that was more prevalent. For example, at the Council of Trent, where the Catholic Church reacted against the Reformation and anathemized the Reformation message and ideas, and calling people to stick to the catechism, to the dogmas, to the sacraments. But then we have Vatican II, 60 years ago, where we find a different face of Catholicism that is very much ecumenical, interfaith, friendly, willing to build bridges, willing to experience what unity does look like. And so, not at the expense of the Roman, but actually as a way to complement it. And so we have to understand this dynamic reality that is not bound to one pillar only, but can be found in between the two foundational elements. And in our days, we live in an age where Catholicism, at least globally, is more characterized by its Catholic element, this ecumenical, intentional initiative that also translates into this interfaith initiatives, willing to bring all religions together, and captured in the 2020 encyclical by Pope Francis entitled All Brothers. That is very Catholic. And so we have to understand these dynamics in order to make sense of what the complexity of Roman Catholicism is all about.
Exactly, and the examples what you mentioned were really useful also. We touched the last four popes. So you mentioned that Second John Paul was rather closer to the Catholic side, but then Benedict went closer to Rome, and Pope Francis really Catholic, and Leo is also Catholic, but closer to. Yeah,
you can see, you know, the swinging of the position between these two poles, and certainly the main framework is given by the Second Vatican Council that moved the Church towards more its Catholicity than its Roman centeredness.
All right, I turn to Bálint for a short question as the translator and one of the participants of Wednesday lecture. What was the most interesting topic for you, or question which was asked to Leonardo, maybe from the audience or from your heart or your thoughts? What do you remember from this lecture on Wednesday?
Yes, so I think one of the main areas that should be worked on in our context in Hungary is like how we approach the practical element of this whole issue, because we all have Catholic friends, families, and I think Leonardo did a great job to separate these two components of the topic, to talk about the Roman Catholic theology and not the Roman Catholic people. So I think it would be also great to hear about this from Leonardo now as well, because I think to make this separable is really important.
Yeah, you're right. Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, we have 1.4 billion Catholics around the world, and we have a great variety of people, and we know, you know, different types of Catholics as our friends, neighbors, colleagues, and so we shouldn't assume that everyone who is attached to Catholicism is at the same spiritual point in his journey, in our journey, and the many Catholics I know, for example, even here in Rome, they're very, you know, creative in their attachment to Catholicism. They may, you know, agree or disagree with the church. They may take one point but not the other. They may mix beliefs taken from other religions. They may be And this is the reality, I think, in many European countries, very much influenced by a layer of secularism. And so you have this complexity that happens in the mindset of individual people. And there are some people who are actually genuinely believers in Christ. They trust Jesus Christ alone for their salvation. They read the Bible. They are in the system, so to speak, but they have they express a genuine faith. So we cannot simply put a stamp on people based on the formal attachment to the Catholic Church. On the one hand, we should be, in my view, should be clear that when we are talking about the institution, the system, the church as such, there is something that needs to be considered that has to do with the fact that the system is committed not to Scripture alone, Christ alone, and faith alone. It is committed to a combination of the truths and beliefs that characterize the Catholic Church as such. But within this system, within this institution, there are individual people. And so we have to be aware that we may find different people, and we are and some of them will also be, regenerated, and we don't know. God knows His own. God is at work across the board, and I would say not because of the Catholic Church, but rather in spite of the Catholic system. So I see that these genuine believers, they are inconsistent Catholics. That is, they don't follow all the rules, the precepts, and the theological points of the Catholic Church. They pick and choose, and because they pick and choose, they can then be committed to Christ alone and to faith alone. If you follow the details of the system, the system will lead you astray. But many Catholics, they do pick and choose, and so in that selection, we should pray that people will find Jesus and a personal relationship with Him, and an attachment to the Word of God.
Yeah, I also have these kind of relatives in our family. Botond and Bálint, you can ask questions soon. I'm just curious. Maybe Leonardo, could you please introduce yourself and your context with us and the audience, what is to be a pastor, a Protestant pastor in the Holy City in Rome. As we heard, you are Reformed Baptist, and what is Reformanda Iniziative? Maybe I'm not pronouncing well in Italian, but could you please a little bit talk about your context in Rome, your church, your family?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, Rome is the eternal city, so to speak, and the place, the center of Roman Catholicism. And we have the Vatican, which is not only a religious place, but also a political entity. It is a sovereign state, and we should never forget the fact that the Pope is not only a religious figure, but also a monarch, a king, an absolute king in a real political territory. And that is in Rome. And in Rome, half of the properties are owned by the church directly or indirectly through the various institutions attached to the church. The church is the main job provider, second to the state, Rome being the capital city and being the place of many departments. But the church is indirectly the most influential agency here, because tourism is based on religious tourism, and the church attracts millions of pilgrims and visitors. And so the city of Rome is not more Catholic, more religiously Catholic than other cities, but is very much attached to the system, because it is through the system that the welfare of the church comes from, the business, hotels, tourism, transportation, services, etc. And so it's a situation not very far from what we read in the book of Acts, chapter 19, talking about the city of Ephesus in the apostolic times, where the temple and the business were so intertwined that when Paul visited the city, actually it was the business people who became to realize what was the challenge and the problem long term. And plus, the city has been always resistant to Protestantism. It was not possible for an Italian-speaking Protestant church to be open until the end of the 19th century. So we missed all the Reformation, post-Reformation centuries here in Rome. It was only after Rome became the capital city of the Italian kingdom that the possibility to have Protestant Italian churches was made a possibility. And then we had fascism in between the two world wars, which was very nasty against Protestants. So the situation is not easy in the sense that we only have been experiencing religious freedom for the last 60 years, 60, 70 years. And we are less than 1% of the population, surrounded by majority Roman Catholic context, and also, especially in the city center, we have a lack of Protestant presence. We have a number of Protestant churches in the outskirts of the city, but as far as the city center is concerned, that is not so much so. And our church is right there at next to the Colosseum, next to the main archaeological historical sites. Our desire is to be a gospel voice in the city. And the Reformand Initiative is something that began in 2016 as a way of addressing a real need that we were coming more and more aware of, not only in Italy or in Europe, but all over the world. And the need was and is that in spite of the fact that the Catholic Church is everywhere in the world, there was no, as far as we knew it, there was no intentional Protestant evangelical initiative aiming at addressing it biblically, apologetically, theologically, historically. The Church of Rome is everywhere, but the evangelical world was not taking care of this. And so that translated into a ambiguity, confusion, superficiality of approach across the evangelical spectrum. And so we decided to provide at least an opportunity for evangelical scholars, leaders, to be equipped and trained on how to engage Roman Catholicism faithfully, charitably, but also clearly from a biblical Protestant standpoint. And we have been doing the Rome Scholars and Leaders Network, a week-long seminar, second week of June, with 30, 40 scholars, leaders from around the world every year in Rome. And we're also doing conferences, podcasts, etc. Everything can be found on www.ecumenical.org. www.reformandinitiative.org. And the work has been going on and expanding over the last 8-9 years.
And in a nutshell, what we should know about your family and maybe your church as best.
Yeah. Well, I'm much older than you, and I'm about to turn 60, and I've been married for 32 years now, and we have 2 adult children, and I've been in the ministry for 35 years now, as a church planter, pastor, always been involved in theological training, and I've been living in Rome for 16 years now. The church was planted in 2010 in Rome, and since then we also helped planting 2 other churches in other neighborhoods of the city of Rome, San Paolo in the south and Prati in the north west of the city. So our desire is to be instrumental in not only growing the church but also planting other churches in the city center, because as I said, the city center for historical reason has always resisted the Protestant presence, and now that we have the freedom to promote the gospel, it is our desire and responsibility to do so by encouraging church planting, encouraging theological training, and also being a cultural presence as well as a gospel presence in the city.
Thank you so much for sharing, and now we can understand your context and life there better. Botond and then Bálint, the word is yours. So if you could have asked one question from Leonardo on that Wednesday task or Wednesday talk, what would it be? So actually we were participants, but we were in the audience and others asked very good questions. But I think we could also ask, so what is your best questions, guys, from Leonardo?
I don't know if it is the best, but Leonardo, you've spoken about inconsistent Catholics, but I think in the modern world we can see real challenges towards the Protestant faith on the internet, especially. Yeah. And I personally know Catholics who were influenced by these kind of content creators. So I would be interested in your take on this kind of Catholic apologists, such as Trent Horn or Bishop Barron, and these guys I think have worldwide influence in a sense. And to their credit, I think they try to take Protestant theology seriously in a way. Yeah. But what would be your general take on this kind of people?
Yeah, yeah, it's a relatively recent phenomena that in a way resembles, with differences, what happened in the 17th century at the height of the controversy between the 2 theologies. I'm aware and mindful of the exchanges that took place between Bellarmine in Rome and Turretin in Geneva and other white takers and etc. in different parts of Europe. So today they have revived the apologetic Catholic tradition over against especially the evangelical wing of Protestantism, because it is that their target is evangelicals mainly, and so they're doing a very, very good job in their terms, with some, in my view, weak points. One is that they have a view of Catholicism that tends to be Tridentine, that is very much attached to the Tridentine, the Council of Trent tradition and post-Trent tradition, but less so when it comes to Vatican II and recent developments. And when I say recent developments, not developments of yesterday, but developments that have taken place since the 60s. And so they are representing a fringe position in Catholicism, not the mainstream position in Catholicism. And they mainly argue from, you know, the Church Fathers up to the Council of Trent, up to the First Vatican Council in 1870, and then the Catechism is their most modern reference point. But they don't take notice of Vatican II and post-Vatican II developments. Secondly, they tend to be very Protestant in their approach to Catholicism and the
Really?
issues. Yes, in the sense, I'm in the sense that they take very seriously. They are textualists. They take texts as real. They apply a literal kind of interpretation to texts. Now, Catholicism is not a textualist religion. Texts are important, but more so are important liturgies, practices, devotions, prayers. It's the lex orandi that is more important than the lex credendi. Of course, the liturgy shapes the belief, but it is the heart, the source, the engine of Catholicism is not texts, and whereas they betray their Protestant majority cultural context they come from. They are very precise in quoting the commas of what the Council of Trent said, what this Church Father said, as indicating their view that it is in the texts that you find the real points of Catholicism. Well, that's again a very fringe position, because Catholicism is not defined exclusively by texts, but it is defined by a much complex range of items, the liturgy, the practices, the culture being more important than texts. And then they are also coherentist. They take very seriously the fact that the Catholic Church has always been right, has always been coherent, has always been consistent, and they have a very sentimentalized view of Catholicism that doesn't account for the historical fallacies of the Church of Rome, the theological contradictions, the fights, the immorality, the blatant discrepancies that have characterized the Catholic Church. They have a very idealized view of the Catholic Church. They live in a kind of a bubble that presents the Catholic Church as this beautiful, profound, and morally integral reality, whereas the reality, historically speaking and globally speaking, is very different. In our context here, even in Rome, what they do would be considered to be very awkward by the majority of Catholic theologians I'm encountering with. They are selective in their approach. They are textualists in their attitude. They are coherentists in their understanding of the Catholic Church, and they live in a kind of a bubble. So having said that, they challenge us to be knowledgeable of our own identity, of our Bibles, of our theology, in order to be able to listen to them and also to engage in dialogue with them. I had an experience with one of them, and I could see that he had, when we talked about Mary, for example, he had a list of quotations from um, some church fathers, and he, piled those quotations, taking away from their context, selectively chosen, and that was his argument. As if you pile up 5, 6 quotations from the church fathers, that is it. Now, other quotations were not considered. Other church fathers were not considered. Um, Differences within the same church fathers were not considered. The view that was presented was a linear, coherentist, textualist, selective view. That is not Catholicism. And so I want to argue that what they are presenting is a little face of a much bigger and larger and complex reality. Perhaps they are not even aware of. They tend to be apologists working in their studies, in their offices, but not really grasping the reality on the ground of what Catholicism is all about, grasping the reality of devotions, grasping the reality of people touching the tombs of the saints, the relics of the saints, praying, doing all kinds of things accepted by the Catholic Church. I don't think they would survive in Latin America or in Italy or in the Philippines because of their narrow framework they work with. Having said that, they're good exercises they're good voices to be dealing with, and but not thinking that they are representing Catholicism. They're representing a niche within Catholicism that seems to be attractive to people who are looking, they are disillusioned out of evangelical shallowness, out of secular emptiness. They look for strong, coherent, cohesive approaches to faith. They present it. But unfortunately, that's not Catholicism. That's not the Catholicism of the Pope, the Catholicism of the Vatican, the Catholicism of Catholic theology. It's their Catholicism, their North American Protestant-like Roman version of Catholicism. That is what I would describe them in this way.
Very interesting. It makes sense to me. And I guess some of them ignore those kind of great ancient theologians like Augustine or others.
Yeah, they select what is fitting for their purposes, and they then say that the church fathers, they all stand on the side of the Roman Catholic position, where it's selective. I mean, the church fathers are a complex world. You cannot pick and we all pick and choose. We all pick and choose the church fathers, but it is not possible to win the game only by referring to the church fathers as if they were a unified voice. They are a choir, and at times a dissonant choir, and you can pick and choose here and there, and you can find your arguments through if you are intelligent enough to do so. We should be aware that you cannot do their apologetic, in my view, is very poor methodologically, epistemologically, and historically poor, because it is an attempt of reducing the complexity of the fathers to one linear, coherent view. That is not the case.
Correct. Okay. Thanks, Balint. The great question. Botond, your turn. What is your best question or comment?
I don't know if it's the best, but I think that a lot of pastors around, or a lot of church members around Hungary cite the joint declaration on the decree of justification. So I think that's one of the main arguments for ecumenical union with the Roman Catholic Church. I just wanted to ask that how do you see this declaration? And would you say, or what would you answer today's arguments? Why isn't the joint declaration on the degree of justification a change in the Roman doctrine of justification? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Just to clarify, it was the 1999
yeah,
Lutheran and Roman Catholic joint declaration, right?
yeah.
Which was signed by the Hungarian Reformed Church also. So it wasn't just signed by Lutheran, it was signed by most of the historical churches.
Yes.
Very important, yeah.
Yes. Well, the content of the declaration is ambiguous and confusing because while it contains some elements that may look like similar to the Lutheran position, it also contains many elements that are in line with the Council of Trent. So it is an exercise of at both ends, just opposing statements and not clarifying their connections. Then the outcomes of the declaration. We had the Jubilee of 2000 with indulgences being administered by the Catholic Church, and still this year, which is a Jubilee year, the indulgences are still granted against the background of the same theological framework of the 16th century. Nothing has changed apart from the need to pay an amount of money to gain an indulgence. Nothing has changed. Thirdly, Pope Francis, in his Joy of the Gospel, Evangelii Gaudium, the Apostolic Exhortation in 2013, he speaks about every religious person to be justified by God. So he uses the language of justification to advocate for the salvation of Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and he talks about uses the language of justification. I don't think that our Protestant friends, they have ever read these documents. They have ever come across this reality. They are fooled by this apparent commonality that they find in one or two statements of the joint declaration on justification. They don't read perhaps the whole text that says that according to the Catholic Church, we are justified through baptism, we're justified through the sacraments. And for the Catholic framework, is not a problem just to insert a reference to grace alone if the content is driven by sacramental theology. And then the outcomes show that nothing has changed as far as the outcomes, the practices of the Catholic Church in terms of indulgences and in terms of this universalist understanding of justification. So I think that we need more awareness, more clarity, more boldness in not just sticking to one or two phrases, but seeing the reality as a whole and the consequences that this reality has brought about.
I think there are plenty of great questions and topics in connection with Roman Catholicism, but let's finish with ecumenism, because in the next month, in January, here in Hungary, there's gonna be the Alliance Prayer Week, and not just here in Hungary, it's a worldwide phenomenon. So I would like to ask you, Leonardo, and the gentleman also to share your comments on it, how we should, what we should do together with Roman Catholics and what we shouldn't.
Well, the Ecumenical Week of Prayer started as a way to express a degree of unity among Christians. The Catholic Church was not part of it. It joined in after Vatican II, and as a way to express the desire to become part of the ecumenical movement and actually eventually to lead it. And what has been going on since. If we look at the recent events at Nicaea in Turkey, we had the Pope convening other leaders around him and leading the way. So the ecumenical movement today is led by the Catholic vision of unity, and so over the last 60 years, the Catholic Church, from being not part of the ecumenical movement, has not only become a significant player within it, but actually the leader of it. And
sorry to interrupt, this year is 1700th anniversary. So
yes, of the Nicaea Council, Nicaea Creed.
So they make a kind of a celebration, and we love you, everybody. So
Sure.
they create around this, right?
Yes, that's right. And that shows that the Catholic Church is leading the movement, is no longer assisting or just participating. It is actually leading it. So my personal view is that as far as I'm concerned, I'm always hesitant in participating in events with Catholic officials, Catholic priests, giving the sense that we are united and prayer is a important way to express our unity. Once you pray together, everything else is a footnote. Everything else is a secondary matter, because you're actually recognizing the reality of spiritual unity, and everything else takes a very secondary role. I don't want to give that impression, not because I dislike the man or the people who are taking part, but because of the theological issues that are still at stake with the Church of Rome in terms of its commitments away from Scripture alone, away from Christ alone, away from faith alone. And because of that, I am not taking part in the Ecumenical Week of Prayer. That doesn't mean that I'm not willing to engage in dialogue or in meeting with people, in engaging in conversations. But prayer brings the level of the meeting to a different position, that it tells that we are now brothers and sisters, and whatever we say after praying together is to be considered as a secondary matter that doesn't really impinge on the real issues that are at stake. So because of it's not a negative assessment of the people who are involved, but because of the theology that governs the Ecumenical Week of Prayer is based on assumptions and points that are not defined by the gospel, but they're more defined by this ecumenical diplomacy. I personally, I have reservations in participating in it, and while I want to meet with people, I don't want to give the impression that the issues are over and they're only in need to be settled at a minor level.
We completely agree, and we have also concerns. Botond, Bálint, as theologians, what do you think about the cooperation or the possibility of cooperation between Protestants and Catholics? Just in a few words, how you think on January Alliance Prayer Week, for example?
I would like just to restate what Leonardo already stated at the lecture. He was in Hungary. He was talking about co-belligerence and alliance. So I think we have to differ on this, and I think it's really important to have some kind of unity in social issues, like family life or other ethical issues. I think we can unite in this type of issues, and I think we have to clarify this, because when someone speaks about no ecumenical union with the Roman Catholic Church, others think that he doesn't want to take part in co-belligerence either. So that's why we have to clarify it, I think, so that we have to fight together in ethical issues, even with other religions. So that's why I think we have to think about that. but I can agree with Leonardo, so I cannot say anything else. But I think it's really hard to manage these two together, to not to I don't know, not to make the impression that we are united in faith, but make the impression that we fight together in ethical issues. So I think there's a really narrow line between,
Yeah,
and we have to find it and navigate it. So that's why I think it's a hard job for us.
yeah.
That's right, and a good example was a few weeks ago between Axioma Alapítvány and Pázmány Péter Catholic University. Maybe Bálint can talk about it. That like Axioma can cooperate on pro-life issues with Catholics, of course, as we, the Church, Protestants, we can cooperate on some issues,
Yes.
pro-life issues, but not on theological fields. What do you think, Bálint?
Yeah, so I think we have to evaluate the world's situation as well, and see the so you can make some kind of priority list, like what are the most important issues in our world today. And I think there are important issues that we have a common view with a lot of Catholic, with the Catholic Church as well, I would say, and even with the Coptic Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church. And on these kind of issues, I think it's beneficial for Christ Church to to make these kind of collaborations. I would like to ask one more clarifying question about what Leonardo said. Leonardo, you were really specific to say, or you said that you are hesitant to pray with officials of the Catholic Church. Is it like an important clarification to say that with officials?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, I cannot question the fact that God is at work in some Catholics, and in spite of them being Catholics, in the sense of them being inconsistent Catholics, the way I explained it. And so, if that is the case, on a one-on-one meeting, on a conversation, I'm not. Who am I to say no to praying together with a brother in Christ? The problem comes when, on an official stage, the person represents the Catholic Church as the institution, represents his bishop, represents his pope, represents his official position. That is, brings the level of engagement to a very different point. And I don't want to give the impression that at that level we have sufficient unity that warrants joint common prayer. In a friendly relationship with a Catholic believer, that's a different scenario.
Thank you so much, everybody, for this talk. We need to sum up now. Maybe a final talk from you, Leonardo, if you have anything on your heart or you would like to say something to Hungarian Protestants. And we are really glad for you. You came to visit us personally. And maybe you can show your book, which was published recently, last year. Azonos szavak, külön világok. That's a great.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I admired your history, and I was almost moved to see, Calvin Square, the place where your main institutions are, and the statue of Calvin, and the different quotes from the 95 Theses and other quotes from other reformers. I think it's a great legacy. It's a great treasure that you stand on. And I was also really impressed by the people I met, pastors and professors at the theological faculty, and the work they are doing in training men and women for gospel work, and the facilities that you have, the opportunities that you have that are not something that many parts in Europe have access to. So take advantage of them and share them and benefit from them. And also, I understand the challenges, because if you are in a big institution with such an historical heritage, there are different kinds of influences that are present there. So there are also challenges ahead of you. Stay faithful to God and His gospel, and always keep the gospel first, avoiding ecclesiastical diplomacy to take over precedence over gospel issues. And yes, the book you mentioned is this one, Same Words, Different Worlds. And I'm glad and grateful for this Hungarian edition of the book. It follows the English, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, and I think also the Slovak edition. There are other languages that people are working on to translate it. And so I was glad that it is also available in Hungarian. It captures, in a way, our conversation this morning. That is, when we deal with Catholicism, we're dealing with a world that is speaking the same language, or almost the same language, but is inhabiting, living in a different world. And so we must go beyond the superficial similarities that we can find in the use of our language, and we need to ask deeper questions about the meaning, the significance, the contents, the gospel meaning of these words. And if we do this exercise, we find that beyond the superficial layer of commonality, there is a world of differences when it comes to how to grasp the reality of the gospel: grace, faith, the cross, salvation. All these words are the same, and yet they mean very different things for the Catholic Church. This is an invitation to engage in meaningful dialogue with Catholics, not on the surface, but on the real issues that lie at the heart of our accounts of the gospel.
Appreciate. Thank you. We are full of gratitude. Let me switch into Hungarian for a couple of few sentences. Köszönjük, kedves nézők, hallgatók, hogy velünk tartottatok. Leonardo De Chiricóval beszélgettünk, Szabó Botonddal, Horváth Bálinttal. Én Tóth Krisztián voltam. Ajánljuk a könyvet a figyelmetekbe, evangéliumi kiadó gondozásában tavalyi kiadás, 224 oldalas, nagyon jó anyag, illetve be fogom linkelni Leonardo honlapját is, reformandainitiative.org-ot, és megpróbáljuk a feliratot is elkészíteni, de a legegyszerűbben jobb alsó sarokban a CC-re kattintva általában a YouTube is megoldja a feliratot. Thank you again. God bless you all and have a great day. And one more thing, that Adam Szabados, who is the leader and organizer of EF, Evangelical Forum here in Hungary, he knows about our talk, and he sends his best wishes, and we're really grateful what you are doing inside Europe, so not just Italy, but all around Europe and the world, inside ELF, European Leadership Forum. So God bless you, and God bless European Leadership Forum, and God bless all.